Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, the evening edition. We're going to give this a shot and see how it turns out. If you are here on YouTube and you want to join the actual conversation, you're going to click on the link down below, and it will take you to Zoom. And from Zoom, you'll click on the link down below, and it'll take you to McConnell, and you can ask questions. If you think you can answer the questions, then join the panel. In the evening, we're starting up at 6 o'clock on Mondays, so there'll be 6 to 6:30, but by 6:10, you should really be here for mic checks. It's a little, we're still figuring it all out, so it's a little looser than normal, but be here by 6:10 in the evening. And if you're coming on in the evening show, of course, we have the morning show as well. So we're only doing this on Mondays for now. We got to see how this turns out, see if we can repeat it or grow it in this area. But we're going to have these questions here and answers, just Q&A. We're not going to do specials just yet. We're going to go for our first month just doing Q&A the way that we kind of going back old school, where we just sit there and just talk about things. So, but if you have questions, use McConnell to ask those questions. The whole show is really driven by the audience. You are the producers. And so if you don't ask very many questions, this will be a lot shorter than planned. It's just kind of how it runs. So if you're not interested, just don't ask any questions, and we might still talk for a while, but we might end early. So anyway, there's no pressure, but you should ask questions. All right, Bill, what do we got?
We have a first one in from Guy Cochran in the panel from Seattle, and he's particularly looking for Jeff Keithley, who was 1F Jeff for us here who've been around for a while. Can we see what's new with Sienna?
Something new? Anything new?
Yeah, there's definitely something new. Showed it really to a larger group just a little while ago, and it's a new Unite module, which is a contribution module, which is part of the Plus package, which is the larger one. It allows you to have scalability. It allows you to have full up to currently up to 1080p as far as a contribution, with full audio and video out via NDI in the current platform, because it's based around NDI and the processing engine. And the return back is it's all proprietary. It's not WebRTC. It's not SRT. It's their own codecs that they use with their NDI cloud and their own processing. So it has a lot of fault tolerance, FEC, and other fun stuff in it that is keeping it as fast as possible and looking as good as possible too.
And Jeff, you're coming in a little low. That mess we had with your stereo mono thing must have affected it.
That probably killed it, but that's about all I got. I'll try to be a little bit louder. I'm on my old faithful here. Yeah, I miss her.
Thanks. Oops, you're muted out.
Bum, bum.
Follow-up question from Mark Herder. What is Sienna?
Sienna is a manufacturer. They're a company based out of the UK, and they create a lot of tools based around NDI workflows. And currently, the Sienna processing engine is what I was speaking of. Is actually it's like a rack of glue that you put in. It could be either on premise or it could be in the cloud, as we are running ours both in both locations, but allows you to have all kind of processing, just small micro modules that are in it, so you can strip out audio, embed audio, de-embed audio, create multi-viewers. It is just a full rack of kit to allow you to do whatever you need to do with audio and video.
Got it. There you go. Next question.
Andrew Moyer of Oakville, Ontario, Canada says, any comments about the latest Zoom update?
So what's new? Yeah, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so there's a few things that are of interest that we're still wanting to play around with. There's a rotate camera, which I haven't tested yet, but apparently you can keep spinning your camera around. I haven't found that yet, but and then what else have we got? The big thing that's of interest is this playing videos directly into the meeting. Essentially, the concept is that you upload the video to the Zoom server, and then you have essentially a remote control panel to be able to play that back out into the meeting.
Local
also
hosting.
haven't had a chance to be able to test that yet, but. And then there's the share mono or stereo sound is something that they're saying is an update, and we might have just seen something with that with 1F Jeff there with and maybe there was something about webinar that's different to meeting that you were in before, Jeff. So that might have been something there. Blurred background apparently is something that Alex is really excited to see.
No.
And so I'm guessing that's in the virtual background settings. I mean, honestly, if they're going to do something with virtual background, I'd rather it be blurred than doing something other crazy things. There's a few more encryption things that they've added, and then that's the key things of interest. They always add these group policy things for big enterprise setups. You can tell that they are still clearly an enterprise company at heart. But there seems to be a few little things there, and I'm sure there's always just little bug fixes that we see as well. So it'll be interesting to play around with it over the next week and see what's going on.
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Somebody also mentioned that in webinars now you can force the attendees to follow the host video order, which could potentially be very exciting.
Interesting. So you can set it up so that whatever order I'm putting everybody in, everyone would see that order.
Or whoever's doing switching.
Sorry?
Or whoever's doing switching.
Right. But I mean, whoever the host is, but yeah. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I didn't test that, the actual host order, but they did move where you would switch the attendee view in a webinar, where it used to be buried in the participant window, and you would have to kind of hunt for it in the panelist side, even though you're adjusting the attendee view, which I always thought was a little weird. They've moved it to the upper corner where the view button is in the right upper corner. I sadly did test the blur background earlier today, and it was worse than virtual backgrounds look. I happened to be on a phone like this talking to someone and leaned over, and then my microphone was crystal clear and my hand was a blurry mess like my background. So it's still got some maturing to do, I think, but it's there. It's something. We're going to be doing more testing on this in the Zoom test kitchen tomorrow, in preparation for another episode next week of AV Tech Talks, where we're diving specifically into tips, tricks, and new feature reviews.
I'm kind of curious as to when we're going to get to a point where a lot of these webcams, even on our computers, have the LiDAR, where it just knows where we are in relationship to the computer. I don't think that we're probably not that far away from that happening. And then all of these things start to become more useful, I think, than they are now, in my opinion. I just hate bad edges. That's the problem with being a compositor. Like, I used to do this all day, every day, and bad edges make me crazy. Anyway, next question.
John Pewitt of Huntersville has, what do you hope to get out of the Monday evening, this version of Office Hours?
Anyone? I just thought we'd see what happened. Go ahead, Jason, and then Sky.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just all one big experiment, which is what Office Hours, I think, has been for a lot of us, just one big, wonderful experiment. Changing the time slot, of course, just gives us, access to more people, more diversity, and a different time slot. I think it's just all a matter of playing around and seeing what fits.
Go ahead, Peter, and then Tucker.
For me, it was
Sky.
just simply an expediency of it. It's less likely at this time of day to interfere with my day job.
Very good. Tucker?
Yeah, just getting to plug back in. I mean, I really missed I was here a lot in the beginning, and then I was not for a long time, and getting to be here again is going to be really nice.
That's good. Sky, and then John.
Well, I've moved back to tea this late at night rather than something caffeinated in the morning, and just getting to feel how Grant kind of possibly felt. But if we go until 2 a.m., my family might have questions.
Go ahead, John, and then Ash.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to be able to spend more time with you guys during the week when I normally can't do it because of work, just like Peter said earlier.
Ash?
I think it's more convenient for us on the East Coast. It's hard with the job in the mornings. I have you guys running in the background, but hard to participate.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I feel like every time we open up a little bit more time, we end up with a different group of people. So, which is, I find to be very entertaining. Like the 5 a.m. group is almost a completely different group than the webinar version, and we have a completely different set of conversations. It's much more slow oftentimes in the 5 a.m. group, we're kind of chewing on something for 30 or 40 minutes at a time, mostly like thinking about events, whether it's, Paul or John or other people that are trying to figure out how to do something. We're kind of figuring that out, but not because, and I think what's different is because there are rooms, breakout rooms, I don't feel any stress to like move on because I just feel like if people get bored, they'll just go somewhere else, so it's a different, they just go to another room and start talking amongst themselves. Something that Benjamin reminds me of if I forget to put the rooms up. Next question.
Chuck Wojak up here in the panels from Concord, California says, anyone want to hear feedback from Blue's event?
Yeah. How'd it go? Who all went? Who went to Blue's event? So what do you guys think? Grant went to a Blues event. Grant spoke at the Blues event. Go ahead, Chuck.
He did. Well, I mean, for those of you that don't know, Blue ran a 3-day, almost 9 hours on one day and about 8 or so on the other remaining 2 days, about how to hold a virtual event on holding virtual events. And a lot of it was meeting planners, coaches, people who were looking at how to do better virtual events. And Blue pulled out all the stops. Part of how he randomized the people to spread out over 9 Zoom rooms, and a lot of that was Grant. I'll let him talk to that. But what that did is it allowed them to have those bigger questions posed, but then split them up into breakout rooms of 4 or 5 people, have some kind of like conversation, micro conversation, and then come back and share. And then they had a huge stage, big screen behind them, and they were using some features of JavaScript interaction on the dashboard where people could click icons similar to these. They could click icons like these, and then they would float up on the screen behind them. It added some interactivity. If someone liked something, they could do something that would show an immediate result on the screen. And they managed everything. No one unmuted. Right. They kept everyone muted until they were called upon, and then they had to call out and have a worker unmute that person. As we know with Zoom, sometimes if people join on phones, they might somehow get unmuted. They had workers that were really quick to mute that. In the evening of the first night, we had a mixologist. They had recipe cards on the dashboard, and she showed how to mix cocktails. And then they went right into a live band. And the way he set it up was perfect. They were on a stage, and he said, one thing we'd like to show you, because a lot of people think you can't do live music over Zoom. We know that that's not true. But he walked down a hallway between the AV boxes and pointed, and his mobile camera just panned right to the live band. And it was perfect. People were blown away. They stayed active for 3 days, and it was just a really fun time.
That's great. Anyone else have any other no other comments? I think I love watching what Blue's doing because we have 2 very different views of it, and he's brilliant at what he's doing. And so I'm trying to learn the things that that I learned from him because I just don't approach it the same way. And it took me a little while to figure out what it was. It's that he really comes from an event, and I was in events, but I'm really a broadcaster. So I'm looking at how to make broadcasts more interactive, and he's bringing events, to that. And it's basically looking at the same thing, but from 2 different places. And it's interesting how when you design events, how much your own personality comes through. I'm sure that, Blue is very, conversational. Like I don't think I've had a conversation with Blue that didn't last an hour. It just we just sit there, we start talking, and the next thing you know, the hour has gone by. And I know this will sound crazy. In small bits, I'm not super I'm super conversational at certain times, but like in an event, like the idea of small breakout rooms terrifies me. Like I just like it, but it's funny. Like small breakout rooms, I'm not interested in at all. Like I'm the guy at the party. Like if I walk in, don't recognize anybody. I've said this before. I immediately leave. Like I don't know how to make small talk. So it's a funny. I realized that watching Blue do what he does, and I was like, why don't I do that? And then I realized, because it's just not my personality. Like it's not. But what's interesting about that is that so many of these meetings and so much of how it gets generated is based on whoever's kind of designing it, what their personality is and what they thought was important from events. Grant.
So Blue said he could jump on if you want him to, but I mean, that's breaking the rules. But
is he here? I don't see him.
I don't know if he's in the Zoom, but he was.
I'd love to have Blue jump on, talk about it, but I don't see him. I don't see him in the list.
Have him raise his hand.
He just said, "Actually, I've been talking all day. Forget I said that."
Oh, okay.
Let's get him on properly though.
He just finished a session.
Okay.
Right. So it's interesting. There's a bunch. For those of you that don't know, Blue and I are partners in the platform that we use for all of those virtual events, and so he's still messaging me. Maybe he's
and he's active in the regular chat too.
Right. We'll see if we get him on. But anyway, my point was, what's really cool is there's sometimes that both Blue and Barry start talking about the virtual events or hybrid events, and I just cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, please say the same thing that I feel, or that we've talked about on office hours, And sure enough, they're in the same boat. When we talk about hybrid events, they really went down the line of, listen, you are doing two events at that point. Like you're doing an in-room event, and you're doing a live, like a virtual event at the same time. It's not just a matter of turning on the cameras. And so when I hear them talk about that, I said, oh, that's great. We're all on the same page, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's every day someone comes up and brings up, okay, then we're waiting to go back to hybrid events. And I'm like, do you have to? like, we really have to get back to those. And I was like, do you have to? Go ahead, John.
I want to follow up with what Chuck said, is that it was an excellent 3-day event. I wasn't the target audience because I'm not planning to, start launching a company. I was looking at it because we have this project with the convention center, and we're going to want to have more people doing this. But I was very impressed. They had a great MC. The swag box that they sent ahead of time was extremely well made, well done. The print materials were good. They had Facebook going. They did a Telegram with audio. So I think they did a lot of things to make it really engaging. And as I said, it was a meta. It was a live event on how to do live events. So sort of looking at yourself. But I engaged in following the breakout rooms. When you go to the breakout rooms with 4 people, I think we did that maybe 8 times. I don't check. Out of the 8 times, 7 of them worked great. The 8th one was a bust. Not all 4 people showed up. One person never turned on their microphone. So there's those challenges. But I just thought they did an incredibly good job. And again, I was thinking I'm really not going to do this. And then they announced their new product that they're working with Grant. So I go, oh, this is cool. So I was very excited when they did that. And they did a lot of what we do here. There was a lot of sharing. The amount of information they were giving, even if you didn't sign up for their services, you really got your money's worth.
One of the things I stole from Blue was the gift boxes in a smaller way. We sent these big kits out that you had to build, and I think I told this a little bit earlier, but I'll say it anyway. We sent these big kits out, 3 Pelican cases, 6K cameras, everything else to these executives, and they had to put them together. It's like 45 minutes, and when we're doing the tech check with them after they put it together, we go, hey, by the way, there's a little unmarked white box in that last kit, but can you that's really important. Can you just pull it out? And when you pull it open, it's craft services. It's got little cookies and mints and things, and it went over so well. and I thought to myself that every response was really, really good. And I was like, thanks, Blue. That was a good idea. Anyway, Jeff, and then Jack, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I've worked with Blue on a few events too, and I tell you what they're doing in the industry is it's phenomenal. Yeah. Their attention to detail and how we're able to shape something that nobody knows what to do, but they're being creative about it to be able to move it forward. It really is something. And I was glad to see that he was doing this, because I think more event people out there will get off of the fence, as they have been for so long in the last 9 months, 10 months, and get things moving again, because they could think of, oh, hey, this can work. And it's not just so much of a matter of we do it all the time, but they haven't. So we need to get more people out there that haven't done it and get them involved.
Well, and I think it's really important. I have to admit that as someone who just really feels like building something where virtual events become really something we just do forever, includes a huge part of the world that's being left out. I mean, that's my big commitment is 85 to 99% of the people aren't going to get to enjoy the event, or they're going to be basically in the kids table. That's what streaming a hybrid event is. It's everybody online is in the kids table. And, they get to watch the adults talk over on that big table over there. It's way up high. You can't quite see them. You just hear them. That's what it really is like. And so I'm excited about the idea that on these virtual events, we can include more people in the conversation, both viewing and asking questions, but also speaking. And I think it's really important, but I think it's important for people like us, everyone here, in Blue and everyone else, to teach everyone else how to do it. There's a temptation to hold on to the information, and we have to get it being successful is the big piece. There's a race, to getting it off the ground before people give up and try to go back to something safe. And I think that we want to, show what's possible in that process. Let's jump to the next question.
I think Guy just tried to bait Blue in with a question about Clubhouse. Just saying. So
Next
Mark
question.
Harder of Brooklyn is in with his, as someone in New York City, I appreciate this late evening version of office hours. Thank you. The question is, being a Zoom host an actual gig that more than one person on the planet is making a living from? By the way, the snow here is awesome. So Brooklyn, I hope you dig out.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I really hope so, because it's actually a good way to spend an afternoon so far.
Yeah. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I think our terminology is important here, because I think that there needs to be a host. I think of Alex as a host of this meeting, but there's a bunch of technicians that are working on this meeting as well, and I think that role is really key. And we're seeing more and more people where they used to walk into a ballroom and they'd have a couple of dudes sitting in the back corner and they'd be like, yeah, they're looking after this event. They're now starting to see, actually, it's really helpful to have a technician in our Zoom meeting who's just helping and making things happen. And so we're doing that more and more, and we're using breakout rooms sometimes to, if someone's having a problem, we can spin them off into a breakout room, fix their problem and push them back, And so there's things like that more and more that we're seeing, technical issues that they're able to look after, and the people can worry about the content and not be worrying about the technical issues.
I mean, the thing is in this, I've worked in a lot of events in a lot of different sizes, and there's always been those events that someone rented a conference room in the hotel, and then they're kind of running it themselves and leading it all at the same time, and it's just rough. It's always kind of a rough experience, and it's how people start, and sometimes they never grow out of it. But I guess I've been fortunate enough to work on, most of the events that I've worked on in the last 10 years. It's a big crew, like for all of them, and you don't expect to do anything. You don't expect the speaker to have to do anything but speak. And I think that because of that, I think I very quickly moved to that here. And it was a mixture of great people volunteering to help. Like I felt uncomfortable like starting to ask everybody to come in and do all this other stuff. But first Grant, then Mickey, and then Bill, and then TJ's kind of stepped up, and then we have of course Fenwick and Phil and Chad and all these and Jeffrey. All these folks have come up, and it allows this to get bigger on its own, as well as it allows me to be present. And for a host, that is the key. The key is having the mechanics of running the event get away from them so that they can focus on the people that are in the event. And I think that is, to your point, Grant, I think that's super. I mean, it's for any of us designing events, you have to figure out a way that the host doesn't have to think about things other than the conversation. Jason, and then Peter, and then Michael, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if someone was actually making their full living doing this. That said, look at every master of ceremony out there, that is probably out of work at the moment, and there is no reason that kind of a pivot is not possible in the future. So just because it doesn't happen this minute does not mean that it's not a great idea, and it is a similar, if not identical, set of skills. Being the ringmaster does not mean that you can fire yourself out of a cannon or walk a tightrope, but what it means is you can keep the audience entertained while all those things are happening.
Yep. Peter, and then Michael.
Well, I was actually going to go back to what Grant was saying. Terminology is important because I run a number of volunteer sessions as the Zoom host, which is a technical term, but I am not the master of ceremonies. I am not the moderator, or whatever term you want to call that. I'm not the front guy. I'm the guy in the back making sure the switching is occurring. I'm streaming it to YouTube, whatever has to be done. And then we also have one other person, usually, somebody to moderate the chat. Right. One of these days we'll talk about McConnell, but to moderate the chat, particularly with 10-year-olds.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things on this. One is that one of the reasons I haven't been around a lot in the last 4 or 5 weeks is because I have been working as the Zoom host technically for some remote productions. I'm in central New York, and I've been doing a lot of things for people in Buffalo and Rochester who really don't have the technical chops to do that stuff. And I allow them to be the host like Alex serves. But at the same time, I was at Blues event, and it occurred to me that people like, what was his name? Devon, his host was absolutely fantastic. And there's he kept everybody engaged. I think he was actually almost over the top a couple of times, but sometimes that's what it takes. And so there's room on both sides. Yeah, for the technicians and for the actual Zoom host.
Did you have any final words, Blue, since we're all talking about you?
No, it's actually just fun to, well, first off, I'm sorry. I'm literally just on my MacBook with no other setup. So I feel embarrassed looking at all you guys. Good.
Turn him off. Turn him off. Turn him off.
To move him back down into the audience. Enough with that. No, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the kind words. And Devon, yes, sometimes over the top, but I think any good MC has a bit of an over the top personality, right, Mike?
Yeah,
you just can't do that and get people engaged, especially people who are mostly just sitting on their duff all day long. Get up out of your seats, move around. So anyway, it's lots of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Chris, last word.
Yeah, I was just going to say the most memorable part of that movie, A Knight's Tale, was the announcer guy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question.
It comes in from Dirk Brewer, who's in Guatemala, and it's about Zoom OSC. The tutorials Andy sent cover 3 applications. Anyone have any free Mac OS alternative that's good enough to do that?
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe, and then Benjamin.
There's Murmur, I think it's MRMR in the App Store. I'll put a link in. It's free, but it's only $5 for Touch OSC. So I mean, if you $5 for a known solid app, that's not a lot.
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, we've seen some good MIDI options. So if you already have some kind of MIDI keyboard or MIDI button pad or other MIDI input device, this is really promising. The other thing, I'll just put it out there, like BitFocus Companion is free and offers a really great touch-focused interface with just the generic OSC controller, or coming soon, the Limonel Zoom OSC flavored companion module. So those might be 2 ones to look into.
Yep. Peter, and then TJ.
Yeah, I was going to say everyone forgets that BitFocus Companion has a web simulator interface that you can just use as the buttons. You don't actually have to have a Stream Deck to make it work. So I happen to have a Stream Deck, but I mean, I've used the buttons a lot too.
Absolutely. TJ?
And QLab is also free to use.
Yep, there you go. And Benjamin?
One last bit on that. QLab requires a license for network keys. So in this instance, it might not be what you're looking for.
Copy. Next question.
Ryan Kettleson of Des Moines, Iowa says, looking to use Keynote for lower thirds into ATEM Mini from a separate computer. Can the companion application automate playback similar to a hyperdeck?
Go ahead, Peter.
I'll show you exactly how I do that. Okay, so let's see, share screen. Oh, disabled participant sharing. You've just disabled me.
All right. It's not disabled. You just have to. He has to make you a co-host. Go ahead and make Peter a co-host, and we'll only co-hosts can share. It's just we'll get you set up.
Okay, there we go.
There you go, Peter. Should work now for you.
Thank you. So now you should see, if you can see it well enough. Left-hand side obviously is my button for my what I call my home page, which does a number of functions. But if you look at the third row down where it says L3 Gartner, L3 BSA, those are all lower third buttons. And on the right-hand side, I just picked one of them. So on key down, those are the steps I chose to do. So tell it which out of the media player, which still to load. Take it on to, turn on the key on air. Change the color of the button to remind me that it's on air if I have to look at it. And if I push the key again, it turns it back to black. So the example is it does that if I push it, does that if I don't push it. So.
And I think that the question is really around using Keynote for it. I mean, this will do stills.
Well, and I was going to turn it back to you and say, I did these with, I hate to say this, but just it was easy. These are PowerPoint, but the point being is the stills you load into the keyer.
Right. I think that the advantage of using the actual, whether it's Keynote or the advantage of using Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever you're going to use is the animations, so that you can build a little animation inside of Keynote. You can use all the little animation tools, and those will all come flying in. And there's lots of ways to do that. But if you already know Keynote, I think that the reason that we did it for a long time was because I was really good at Keynote, and I didn't have to do anything else. I didn't have to figure out how to render.
And I agree. I read the question a little differently. That's why I just
what you need to do is you need to have to have Keynote do it. You would need to just drop a keystroke. So you have to know what order your pages are going to be, and then you have to be able to tell either a separate computer or the same computer that the Stream Deck's on is to just do a keystroke, and then it'll be framed forward. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, exactly what you said as far as just using the key commands. And then Vicrio Hotkey is the application that I would personally use to do the actual command on the machine. So Companion is remote controlling Vicrio Hotkey. Vicrio Hotkey is just pushing buttons on that computer to run Keynote.
Yep. And Stuart, if you can make me co-host, that'd be great. Next question.
Stan Chan is in from Roseville, California. What's the reason for the popularity of Clubhouse? What makes it unique, and why would it potentially fail?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
It will fail because of signal to noise. I've been on it 12 times maybe and still have not found anything compelling.
And for some reason, Roscoe, you're having a lot of trouble with your internet today. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. It does sound like a bad wireless, but I don't know what would be going on there. But I think that when it works, I think Clubhouse is very much like what we're doing here. It's a bunch of people sitting around talking about a subject, and a lot of people are just listening. I mean, there's a lot of people listening to this right now. And so I think that it's not that much unlike what we're executing here. I think that, and the fact that you can just turn it on and do it, I think it's, I was always amazed that there wasn't, Facebook had talked about it or had hinted that they were going to do audio live streaming, and they actually had the tools there for a little bit, and then it disappeared. And I think that they, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But I always thought that, there are a lot of people that just want to listen to live audio. So I think that it's a good business model. I think the hard part for all of these networks is where do you grow to? To Roscoe's point, like you have to get somewhere, from here. And I don't, I think that they have to figure that out. TikTok was able to figure some of that out. Like it did look like it was starting to plateau, and then they kind of organized themselves a little bit. But the, and we can talk more about that, but I think Clubhouse still has that. That's always the challenge. You get off the ground, and then can you keep on flying? Go ahead. You either grow or die. Sky, and then Stuart.
Ken Burns did a documentary about the early days of radio, and it started off with the ship to shore, and then the small little clumps there, and I think that reaching out into a world, and also participating, as you say, AM radio with the 50,000 watt in Mexico went all the way to Canada, and that's what I kind of listen to it at night. I go to sleep oftentimes, and they're still talking, but the the need for connecting, the need for community, and they traditional media has become so saturated with, buy this, sell that. So I just think people are trying to connect. Will it last? No, it's the signal to noise ratio, but maybe some of them will float up to because they've just gotten the opportunity to practice.
I mean, I think that the ease of use is a big piece of it, is that you don't have to, it's designed around the phone. You don't have to have any technical, like everyone's kind of lowered to that lowest common denominator. And that makes it easier for people to participate, easier for people to create, because they don't have to figure this stuff out. Just call in, call it a day. And so I think that there's a draw that gets it off really fast. And then the problem is can you end up with a lot of people, to a lot of the points that have been made here before, that they aren't people who can lead a discussion. If you don't have a moderator. And so the danger for everybody is that there are good people out there. I listened to one from people doing voiceovers, reasonably good talk. Like I jumped on. It's all people who do voiceovers, and I was like, this is kind of fun to listen to. It was a little. They do voiceovers, not radio. so it was a little too stilted of talking, a little too self-referential, I think, is the problem. And look at us, look at what we're doing. That's a big temptation, rather than just getting, like, you'll find that I'm very uncomfortable with us being, I try not to be too self-referential as look at us as much as just like protein, just as much protein as we can push into the system generally. And I think that's what's oftentimes missing with these. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just an FYI, I'm noticing some funky behavior behind the scenes with Zoom. After I made you co-host, it wouldn't allow me to switch away from gallery view to host view. But it's now back to normal. So
Okay.
Something odd going on there, just to be aware of.
Okay, great. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Guy. Before we move on, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was feeling like, sorry if I'm coming in hot. The people that are jumping on there initially feel like it's a California like land rush, where they're like, a new platform, I better get on fast before I better get my audience before. It's like the early days of YouTube, where a lot of the people that got there early are now super popular, whereas if you get in now, it's kind of hard to get 1 million followers. And so I think that's what's happening with Clubhouse, is we're seeing this rush of some of the people like Grant Cardone and some of these guys that are getting 10, 20, I think he's up over 100,000 people. And so it's a great conversation as long as it's flowing. And some of the people just, they need interaction. We're getting it here where we're seeing our peers all the time. And I heard some people discussing on there that they haven't been out of the house in like a year. And I was thinking, wow, that's bizarre. Yeah, but every day I talk to you guys, and it's kind of like an outlet. And so it's different than some people that they're just craving this connection. And I think that they're finding it on Clubhouse.
And I'm going to, I just don't know exactly where, but we'll do some Clubhouses as an experiment within this group of, let's just see what happens if we all go over there and do the same thing we're doing here. Just do it over there. So just to see what happens, as an experiment, because I want to experiment with different platforms. And at first I was just going to pipe this into Clubhouse, but then as I researched it, I'm like, okay, people all expect to be part of that conversation. So it's not really something you can pipe in. Go ahead, Blue.
So oddly enough, we actually did a bunch of that over the course of the last few weeks, where we were piping in conversations that we were having outside of Clubhouse into Clubhouse. And how we did it, and I thought it worked fairly well. First off, throughout the conversation, that it was like a 90-minute presentation that we were doing on virtual events, and then of course come to our event. That was why we were doing it, right? And inside of that 90 minutes, on where we were doing it on Zoom, I had a little pre-record that I was basically going over to Clubhouse and playing it, ducking my audio and playing a pre-record saying, hey, you're listening to a presentation on Zoom. If you're interested in joining the conversation over there, come on over to meetwithsage.com. Just, redirected a domain to a Zoom meeting. Before we went live on that particular training, I actually spent 30 minutes on Clubhouse, just open Q&A, letting them know what was going to happen, did the 90-minute presentation focused on Zoom, and then opened it back up for Q&A to Clubhouse at the end. And I found a couple things happened. One, folks who were on Clubhouse actually came into Zoom and really enjoyed the conversation and being able to see. And then two, folks on Zoom, a couple of days, we actually left Zoom up, but kind of started doing Q&A just with Clubhouse. They then made their way and merged over into Clubhouse. So we found that we were able to kind of bring two audiences together that maybe wouldn't have seen each other without it. So it was an interesting test case.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so I'm definitely circling it in the same way that I, did a bunch of stuff with, start paying attention to TikTok, and then got hired to do a whole bunch of stuff with TikTok, and still enjoy it. I don't do as much TikTok stuff. I've just been busy doing other things, but so I think that I'm always kind of, generally what happens is someone hires me to do stuff on some platform. So I do it in a level of just paying enough attention that I'm literate by the time I get someone to make calls and ask me to do something. I'm not like, oh, I don't know how to do it. Anyway, next question.
Just a few votes behind Stan's former question is the next question he posted from Roseville. What's missing from OBS that would bring it to feature parity with vMix?
Stability. Sorry, like on the that would be the first one. Go ahead, Tucker.
About 14 years of development. vMix has been around a long time. It's been in development.
Whoop, you're breaking up. We're having more trouble this evening than we normally have.
Tucker's using vMix.
Yeah, exactly. Peter, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you kind of laughed when you said it, but that was the exact reason I went away from OBS and went to Memo Live, because I'm on a Mac, and so couldn't use vMix.
I do think that OBS is a lot more stable on the PC because so many gamers use it. So that it's got just a lot more. It's being banged on a lot harder on the PC side.
But the support model is also what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that it always has the difficulty that you end up with a more open source or low cost solution is there's not enough support. Like as a production person, I don't usually, when someone says something's free, I'm always like, ooh, I don't think I want to put that in my pipeline, because I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know how stable. I don't know how much time is invested. I want to pay for things because I want, like I'm the guy that goes to the hotel. I want to see $29 a night for internet, because that means I'll have fast internet. Like it's just like if they told me that it was free internet and the room was was $30 more, I wouldn't think anything of it. So I just go, oh, sure, I'll get it. But I want to scare everybody else off, And so in the same way, I want to see products that you're paying for, so that I know that they'll be stable. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah. First, a note on what just happened. Zoom just crashed out of me like 3 times in a row. And that's the first issue I've had in Zoom since I've been on Zoom, which is probably about 4 years. That's wild. 2, what I was saying, and I don't know if it came across, was about 14 years of history and development, because vMix has been super well developed.
Yeah. We heard that part, and then you were gone. And then Grant said Tucker was on vMix.
It had nothing to do with it. It was Zoom.
Next question.
Keith Lang.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin. Sorry, I missed you there, Kevin.
Oh, I was just going to say, based on the answers.
Oh, you muted yourself again. There you go. You're open now.
It sounds like the only thing that's missing is somebody forking it and charging for support.
Sorry, say that again.
It sounds like the only thing that is really missing is somebody forking it and then offering to sell support.
Well, I don't even know.
Wants.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. Yeah, keep giving it away, but then sell the support for it. Be kind of like a Red Hat kind of thing. Yep. Next question.
Okay, Keith Lang is looking for some development help. I'm working on software for live video for Zoom. Think OBS for the rest of us. Would love to hear panel thoughts on, quote, I wish there was magical software that did X, close quote.
Go ahead, Chuck.
There is. It's called Zoom OSC.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I'd like something that would auto do a decent lower thirds, not like what we've got, in Zoom where your little name, but like something that looks nice.
Yeah, and I think that, go ahead, Grant.
Oh, I was just going to say, we say it all the time, but having like an output from Zoom that is to a deck link or something, so we have a solid connection out, so we can do a bunch of hardware switching. I'm not exactly what the question is. I think it's just like what are the features that we'd love to see, but that's the type of thing I'd love to see.
Yep, Benjamin.
Some kind of compositing. I think I use OBS primarily because of the ability to have multiple layers and multiple sources coming in, whether that be video or pictures or live multiple cameras being composited together, as well as chroma keying or that sort of thing.
Kyle and then Stuart.
A green room for Zoom.
Like a dedicated green room that just does what it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can build those now, although it's harder in webinars because you can't do breakout rooms.
Right. There's no one green room to rule them all kind of thing.
Right. Stuart?
Well, how about a breakout room for webinars? But also on the subject of the lower thirds, didn't Andy demonstrate lower thirds for us last night?
Yeah, in Zoom OSC, I think that there's a level between where Zoom is and where Zoom OSC is that is a make it easier for people doing average meetings to have more tools. That I think we tend to very quickly move to solve all the things with heavy iron. I do heavy iron for me, but also Zoom OSC is not going to be something that the average person is going to throw together, at least right now. It's a little heavier lifting, which is why we're all training on it. But I think that for the average person, I think that the things that I see that would be nice are, again, the green room stuff, but also the lower thirds that we've talked about a little bit of being able to really design those as or something that's composited in the front. I think is useful for. I guess I would say a lot of people want it. I'm not sure if it's needed, but a lot of people want it. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Jeff.
Andy's calling Isadora into Zoom and doing a good job with it. That's what he's using for lower thirds.
Yep, Jeff.
I've kind of been biting my lip on this, but I'd like to just give a little bit of thoughts that I have from being in a broadcast background and production background for quite a while. My grandfather, a long time beating my head, not literally. He did use a big hammer many times, but it was right tool, right job. And I just don't see that what we're doing with workarounds with Zoom, and I'm not talking about the meeting manipulation and stuff like that. I'm talking about production part, making it look better. Use the right tool. Use a video production device, whether it be software-based like I tend to go to, or hardware with graphics and stuff coming in from other machines, Chirons, whatever. Right tool, right job. And I just don't see that doing this over and over and trying to make Zoom be a video switcher as the one all be all. I'm not excited about it.
I think that there's just a massive market between where we work and where right now people are kind of struggling and just barely surviving Zoom, but we do Zoom every day here, and we're making it work. I think that there are, for me more, again, we throw hardware at stuff or we throw software at stuff, but I do think there are things that could be made that make it a lot easier for people to run, that kind of in between room where you're kind of managing something, in a hotel. Like I think of all the different events that I've worked on since, from the last 30 years. And there are the events that were, someone was doing themselves at the hotel. Then there's events where I would go in. I used to manage event teams. And so there's 10 of us that would basically run an event for 200 people, and we would do handouts and do all the other bits and pieces, and so that's a different level. Then there's Salesforce, or someone doing something that's a much bigger thing, and so that I think that there's a layer that a bunch of people managing event effectively that is a very wide part of that pyramid. We are at the very top of that pyramid, doing some crazy stuff. But I think that there is definitely an opportunity for Zoom to grow and kind of cut that distance. Or for developers, I think that I'm really glad that Zoom is opening up the API. And I hope they just keep on scrolling that open to allow developers to develop it rather than for Zoom to try to figure out how to do what everybody wants. I think that so I'm excited about what Grant and Blue are doing. I'm excited about what Andy's doing and what Keith might be doing, is just to try to make it easier. Because what happens, why it's good for us, why it's good for me, is that people will always hit that moment where they need heavy iron. Their show gets bigger, they get bigger, they get bigger. Like everyone always wondered, like with Hangouts, we used to joke as we were doing all these events, because I'd bring $500,000 of hardware, like I would just, here's a truck and then we're going to run your Hangout from it, but I knew that I could teach my clients to do anything they wanted on their own, because eventually what I wanted them to do is be as successful as possible, because I knew that eventually they were going to need more than what they were ready to do. And that's and so you just want to kind of move them through that evolution. Go ahead, John, and then Blue.
Yeah, you triggered something in my thought as the software engineer here. I would really like to see a SaaS solution to do this. And the reason why I say that is I don't want to configure the big iron. I don't want to set up the big iron. Mm-hmm. I want to leverage the cloud and use that to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've switched over to with our security tools. And I think that events could benefit a lot from that.
Go ahead, Blue, and then Tucker, and then Kyle.
Two just really quick things to Alex's point about the fact that at some point people are going to run into that wall where they need heavy iron. It's one of the reasons that at our event, we literally did a walk around of backstage and kind of told everybody what we were doing, because there's no chance most people can do it, right? And then the flip side for Keith, I feel like apologizing on behalf of the panel, even though I'm rarely a part of it. You asked the wrong people this question, dude. You're talking to a bunch of nerds who have a ton of access to really cool hardware. I think to get the answer to your question, you need to ask people who have no idea what to do with hardware. Just saying.
Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, as far as the comment, one that's fantastic insight. The comment about a software as a service to do these sorts of things. I think there's a lot of people working on it. Two, I think you could contact Jeff, you could contact me, you could contact Guy, and we can provide you EAAS, engineering as a service, to do what you need to do. You don't need to know how to build the tool. We'll build it for you. We'll happily hand the keys over.
I like for instance, when I do Unity, I have this job that we have kind of tied into Unity. I don't even think about doing it myself. Like it doesn't even occur to me. I'm like, I'm just gonna call Tucker, and then and all day I'm like, Tucker, I need one more person. I need to do this, and it's like, on it, done. And I was like, I have no temptation to try to figure that out. Kyle.
My question is for Alex. Does the follow host view Zoom update that they just added, does that give you the program output that would be the feature that we wanted, but does this do that?
So the problem is that Zoom needs another class of user, which is called the editor, or the technical director, or whatever you want to call it, but the vision editor, or vision mixer, or whatever they want to call that person, but that needs to be not a co-host and not a host, but literally the person that is driving what people are seeing, in the event, that's their class of permissions. And then inside of that, they need to have a different display, which is there's a window they can open that doesn't require a second window or whatever, that is the output. Like, this is my output. This is what everyone's seeing when I'm cutting. So they just have that, so that Stuart, for instance, doesn't have to figure out what monitor or what's being shown. It's not following. It just says, this is the output. Whatever you're doing is that's what I don't have to open up another computer to watch it. Then you want to add a bunch of tools that are, again, I've talked about soft selections, which is that in Zoom, like we did this with Hangouts, we wrote it programmatically, which is that we basically, the two things that we did were that we did soft selections. Only pay, like in this group here, I could say, only pay attention to Bill, John, and Grant. And then it would only auto switch between those. No matter what someone else does, it just sits there and focuses on that. And then the other thing that we had was we had a slider that would let us control with sliders, multiple, that would let us control attack and decay. And so we could sit there as the event works, and we could kind of work what makes sense for this event and fine tune it. And there was a lot of interest in what we were doing. No one could figure out why these events suddenly ran really smoothly. But those are little fixes that could be done inside of Zoom that would transform people's meetings. And it's so that those are little things that would make a big difference. And maybe we'll see them someday. Go ahead, Stuart.
So what we kind of want is vMix or OBS inside of Zoom for doing that management. If I can just point out one thing so that people can understand, this is what I'm looking at the moment. So I have the gallery view there when it's gallery view. I've got the whoever's speaking here. I've got my Wi-Fi statistics today. I've got the YouTube feed coming back at me so I can make sure that everything's going. And I've got my feed from vMix, plus that's McConnell and what have you there. But what would be fabulous from the switching point of view is if on where I've got the gallery view, I could see the gallery view the whole time separate to what we're sending to YouTube and the like. So I would have that appearance that you can see there instead of having the host view.
The number one reason that I don't try to cut myself is that I can't see the gallery when I cut to the speaker view. Go ahead, Chris.
Stuart, are all those monitors running off the same computer?
Not quite. Let's see. So this monitor you can see over here is vMix. That is an ATEM Shogun, and all three of these are off of the laptop.
Great. Next question.
Show friend Laura Seal is in from Greensboro, North Carolina. Can somebody recap what Zoom ISO is or is going to be? Zoom ISO, is that a thing?
Yeah, Zoom ISO. I think that. Go ahead, Ben. Pretty quick. We're going to have to start accelerating, or we won't get through all these questions by the top of the hour. Go ahead.
Very briefly, imagine Zoom OSC version 4, but if every participant or your choice of participants came out as a clean feed of NDI at full meeting resolution. So if you have 1080p enabled for your meeting, everybody comes out, or your selected people come out at 1080p through NDI.
Super.
I don't think it's confidential. I'm sorry, Andy, if it is.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Paul Prusakowski from Gainesville, Florida. Can a remote operator control cameras that are connected to an ATEM Mini Pro from a remote location? If possible, are there better cameras to do this with?
So you just need to be able to get access to the switcher. So the way we do this is that we put them on it. You can do port forwarding or you can do a VPN, and we use VPNs most of the time. So we send out our switchers. This is exactly what we do. Is we send out our switchers with a the way we've done it currently has been a Meraki Z3 with because we have a whole Meraki infrastructure along with an ATEM. Now on our big remote kits, we do it with an M1 as well, an M1 Mini. And the reason that we do that is because not only can we shade the cameras, but we can control all the settings on the Blackmagic camera, because the M1 will open up the iPad app that Blackmagic makes. And so you can sit there and change ISO and everything else remotely, for those cameras. Now, if you just want to shade the cameras, you just need the switcher, able to have a public IP. That's the bottom line, a public IP or a VPN to get to it to be able to remote shade it anywhere in the world. And I've shaded cameras 8,000 miles away, and usually just tell the camera operator, hey, I need you to just step away for a second. I'm going to fix your camera. Go ahead, Jason.
You forgot about telling them about the time that you were shading. Were you shading or switching from a plane? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A plane. So yes, the answer is absolutely yes. Also to mention, the most recent 3D, what are they called? Bidirectional boxes will absolutely allow you to shade a 6K camera through an ATEM.
Right. That's still in the same building.
Yeah, any ATEM. But yes, of course, you have to get into the switcher. So yes, I'm just adding to what you said.
Yeah. In the room is just so, so last decade, you just have, but I got to tell you, the first time we did it, it was super exciting. Like we were just like, I can't believe this works. And then it just got to the point where that we just are constantly shading people's cameras with, remotely. And it really makes a lot, especially if you have high profile individuals with a single camera that you're sending out, you're sending a camera system out to, being able to control that camera is useful. Tucker, did you have your hand up?
I was just saying thank you for the reminder about the ability to control the 6Ks with the regular ATEMs. Forgot about that. Thank you, Jim.
Yep. Next question.
And I'm laughing because Eld Woolek put up a legitimate question, and he's put in a question about John Idleson's shirt from this morning. I had a call this morning and missed out. The guy told me about it. Can John get out that great colorful shirt we had on and let us take a look at it again on the scope? It was an awesome moment.
Well, first, that guy has to get the scope up.
And
my disclaimer is Alex needs to give permission because this falls under what I would consider weird.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You can go get it. What's amazing, you got to see the scope. The scope actually
the scope makes it.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. The
Selling
great.
out on
But here it is.
Amazon.
You gotta see this. So watch the scope in the Zoom room, and watch at least this morning.
And I'll turn my back to this.
The
scope looks like Tempest.
The fact that the scope is actually hitting the color marks or getting close to hitting the color marks.
It's hitting the pure color marks. Like
I know.
It's awesome.
It's just, this is like a peak. I don't know if we're a peak geek, but we're pretty close to being excited that someone's wearing a jacket that looks proper on a vector scope is getting very close to peak.
The fact that it was so good on the vector scope really had me.
I know that's the whole thing.
The ultimate. Let me see if I can do just one more thing with it. One more test. Let me see if I could do this.
And how many Zooms can call up a vector scope?
Oh, there you
go. Do that.
This is the most important one, though. This is a bladed plug.
There you go. Oh, there. Brenda, look at that. I know. I think other people have been getting that magazine. I don't know where mine hasn't shown up yet. Anyway,
anyway, I have worn it. I can be rented out to do emceeing in it now. I fear this might be my retirement career.
I think we need to pitch Semty about we should do all of their shows for them, and we'll wear test patterns. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Drosko.
I was gonna say, if you ever need to like find engineers in a remote location, always just wear that jacket when you go on your site surveys, and you'll like, oh, there's an engineer. He's an engineer. You'll find him.
We could wear them in the Home Depot a lot. Yard work and engineering. You just have
John,
to
you said you had a family picture with everyone wearing those. I want to see that picture.
We have, I have a family picture with 14 of us, and as I said, we were in Lincoln Park, and people stopped us wanting us to take pictures. We had a wonderful restaurant in Chicago, and as we walked in, we asked for our table, and they're very confused because they thought we were the performers for an act.
All right, next question.
Yeah, you got to learn a Sam and Dave number in those. That'd be perfect. Soundbroker Las Vegas is in next with, what is the benefit of using McConnell rather than the chat feature in Zoom, and how do you recommend setting up the screen layout on your computer to get the maximum use value?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to just show you how I've got my screen layout and address that part. I think nobody's better than you for showing that. As you can see here, I've got it split screen where I've got I've got two computers, but the main thing is I've got the main Zoom conference on one half of the screen, and then I've got the other half of the screen set aside to the full desktop version. I do have separate tabs for the mobile version and then the presenter version. But I like using this because it allows me to see the questions that are coming up at the same time as I see the discussion. So I'm able to keep in.
There's also go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, for many days, we did office hours using the Q&A feature in Zoom, and so chat and questions. So we had chat going. And same sort of thing, people doing that, and then questions in the question module. Now there was no voting up in that, and there was a few other things. I mean, it's chalk and cheese, really. You've got a serious tool in McConnell, but particularly where it comes very handy was when we started streaming to YouTube. And we have another audience that are able to access it that are not in Zoom. And now you're kind of bringing all your audiences together. The next level also would be if we had multiple Zoom meetings going and we weren't able to do it all in Zoom. We have a separate tool that people are able to use. So we love it.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, can I just ask a silly question? I'm seeing some funky behavior while I'm switching here, and I keep looking at the YouTube feed and it keeps coming back to the grid view while I've got things set on speaker view. So quick question for Bill, Grant, Guy, and yourself. Are you on the latest version of Zoom, and is it taking control from me?
Just a note for the edit is that we just survived the edit. Like I don't want to interrupt the show talking about the edit. Yep. So we'll just do the best.
I just thought it was interesting that it's,
I know. I just don't want to stop the train of thought for just survive it, and it comes out the way it comes out. Go ahead, Tucker.
Quick question about the back end of McConnell, just a touch. I know there's a lot more tools that are available for the people that are actually managing the Q&A and things like that. How about analytics? What does that look like for someone that uses Mecconnell as their platform?
We have a lot of analytics. I mean, we know when, I mean, we don't use the analytics right now, but it's able to gather, everybody's entry, exit, when questions are done, polls, responses. There's a lot of stuff, but so does Zoom. Zoom has a lot of that. I mean, the big thing is that Mecconnell has a bunch of tools. Like, for instance, I mean, the biggest thing is we've got Chris. So people are, we've been asking for things for Zoom for a long time. Oftentimes people ask stuff in Discord and it's there in a couple days, sometimes the same day, that let's go ahead and add this and let's add that. And there's all these there's like the In-N-Out Burger kind of hidden commands that are all inside of Mecconnell that we've added so that you can ask questions in line and you can do a bunch of other bits and pieces. And so Chris is, constantly evolving it. And on the back end, the problem is that when you're managing the chat and everything else in Zoom, it's, it's very crude, because you're doing it all in front of everybody. And you have all these other bits and pieces, and the in the back end here, we're seeing the responses. We're able to even flag things or flag people. We're able to set up, if we want to block things, we can block them. We have a lot of control over a lot of the bits and pieces. We haven't started promoting Mecconnell as the platform yet, but again, if we really wanted to start growing the listenership, we could really just promote Mecconnell as a, like the way that you get office hours. Like, there's no reason for us to have more people inside of office hours anymore. There's not, like, we have enough people that are here. There's already a growing number of people that are just on YouTube and listening to Mecconnell, which is why it's kind of a pain when one thing we have to fix is the SoundCloud thing is worthless. So I have to find a better solution. Go ahead, Jan.
So to further my question, what's the fastest way to learn Mecconnell? Because to me, I'm super confused with it right now. It's like all over my screen. I've got a YouTube in the middle. I've got questions on the left.
The easiest thing to do, if you only have one screen, my recommendation is to use the mobile version of Mecconnell, because it's just it's stacked and it's much easier to set it next to what you're doing. The mobile version is really designed as a second screen experience, but it works great as the second screen on your main screen, which is that you don't open the one. If you're in Zoom, I wouldn't open the one with YouTube on it. I would just use the mobile one. It's going to give you all the same information without having to deal with it. And that's much more compact. And that's how, when I'm opening it up, the desktop one is if you want to watch what we're doing and it still interact with the conversation. So someone can be watching YouTube and then interacting with, asking questions and voting on questions without having to log into Zoom, to do that. It also makes us portable. For some reason, we decided to do something else. Like, for instance, there's some point where we may start doing much more produced events where the stream that's going out to YouTube is very different from what we have in Zoom. So the Zoom might be contribution, but we're going to switch to, like, for instance, we're going to eventually start grabbing onto the participant view of Zoom. Rather than streaming straight from Zoom, we'll grab the participant view of Zoom and then stream that to Zoom, stream that to YouTube, and to LinkedIn and to Facebook and to Twitter and all these other things. But when we do that and we start building a much more produced event, if we choose to do that, at that point, we're able to shift those gears really easily, and all the people watching can still ask questions and be part of it without us having to figure out how do we have them do that as part of Zoom. And again, finally, we can't, growing the Zoom support, if we suddenly grew the viewership to 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 people on YouTube, it would be free. Zoom would be really expensive. Go ahead, Ed.
I usually look at the mobile on my desktop.
Yep.
I think I've only looked at the actual desktop one once. What's the latency like between the YouTube and what we're seeing here in the Zoom?
Nominal latency is 12 seconds. It's on the low latency mode, but not the ultra low latency mode. And that's the default for Zoom. That's how Zoom does it through the API. Go ahead, Tucker.
It's really interesting, that latency question, because you would think, and a lot of times we think, oh my gosh, it's going to be really hard to follow. And what I notice is that the question pops up a little bit early, because I do spend a decent amount of time watching it just kind of on the side. And I'm still able to have be part of the conversation in chat, which is really surprising, even with that 12 second latency. But it's great. I mean, it really is impressive.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, you can't listen to it. I had it on, and it was very confusing to hearing the way it is. But I just followed the link, and I couldn't find the mobile version, so there must be another link for mobile version.
It should be in the chat. We usually post them into Zoom in the Zoom chat. You'll see the mobile version and the desktop version are two options.
It's there.
Next question.
Chris Fritchie, who's often in the panel with us from Trumbull, Texas, says, can someone give me the 1-minute pitch for what Zoom OSC is?
1-minute pitch. Zoom OSC. Go ahead, Roscoe.
It's all the hooks, all the things you wish you could do in Zoom, control them directly from keypads using a command structure that's built, that was a replacement for MIDI.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, 1 minute. No, I'll give you 20 seconds. It's using Zoom without fussing around and without a mouse.
What I would say is it exposes Zoom's API via OSC. So basically it has a bunch of hooks that go in. He does all the work of the API, so that OSC is a much more known and much more common way to interact between applications to send information back and forth. And so by having it be OSC, it makes it available to a lot of other apps that are available. So he does all the work of talking to Zoom and in the language that Zoom wants to hear. So it's basically an API for the API. Go ahead, Grant.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would just give a slight distinction on the API, just because there's the application API and then there's the Zoom API as far as the service goes. And so they're not the same thing. And so the service is all about registration and statistics and reporting and all of that you can get from as a web API details. And then there's what Zoom OSC is doing, and that's APIs connected in the application in controlling what happens in the application.
But it allows you to basically, you have a Zoom window like what we have here. You have a Zoom instance that basically can be remapped to the way that you want it and tied into all the exterior controls. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so not for the mere mortal, not for just regular meetings.
Yes, certainly.
Well, that's what we're going towards. Yeah, that's what we're.
You'd have to understand all that stuff on the back end, though, right?
Which is why you don't have to. The key is it's a lot simpler to understand that stuff rather than writing directly to Zoom. And the reason we're doing 4 weeks of training is so that a bunch of us can figure out how to use it together. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, that really is the key to it, is the fact that finding, one of, the thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that can really dive deep and understand an API and figure out all the calls, stay up to date with it and all that stuff. Andy's one of those guys, and he's exposing it to us in a way that, Chris, you could absolutely sit down and in 2 hours, 3 hours be functionally there with it in a way that makes your meetings that you do today 80% better than they are.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Everything you do that's very complicated and multiple button clicks, put it into a 15 button stream deck, make it available to a teacher and teach them those 15 buttons. They don't have to know Zoom OSC. They really don't even have to know Zoom. Those 15 buttons might be everything they need to do inside of Zoom.
John and then Benjamin.
Yeah, anything you can do. Oh, sorry.
Two Johns. Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah, John Pruitt. Yep, John Pruitt and then Benjamin and then John Edelson.
I was going to say, anything you can do programmatically, you can do repeatedly with minimal errors. Once you get the errors knocked out the first time, you have no more errors. So you can just repeat the same stuff over and over again. It's fantastic.
Well, and the thing there to know is that for the end user, if you're someone that can use Zoom OSC, for the people that you hand it to, as Roscoe alluded to, it could actually make Zoom a lot simpler than it was before, because you can automate all those things, but you don't have to write to the Zoom API to do it. You can simply use this interface to make it a lot easier. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Roscoe got my.
Yep. Okay. All right. John Edelson, last word, and then we'll move on.
It's magic.
All right. Next question.
Stan Chan is back from Roseville. Can you replicate an ATEM supersource in OBS? Multiple supersources? What would be the potential limitation and or needs to be added to OBS to make that sort of thing comparable between the two?
Good. Jason?
Yes, you absolutely can, and you will absolutely lose your mind. What is needed? An insane amount of computing power and an infinite amount of patience. And if you're on a Mac, all that times 10.
I don't think OBS is that usable on a Mac, personally. Go ahead, Benjamin.
OBS is usable as a hobbyist on Mac and not useful for production on a Mac. And on the super source note, try Zoom OSC instead.
Next question.
From an inscrutable The Seventh Scroll, what do you guys think about Ecamm Live versus QLab for Mac Live cooking broadcasts?
I kind of feel like they're completely different things, but maybe kind of. I guess Ecamm can play back video as well, but it's. Go ahead, John. Pruitt and Peter.
I was going to say, wouldn't Ecamm have a little bit more issue with latency since it's working over Wi-Fi usually? And might cut out more, drop more than going QLab from a PC?
I mean, QLab just has an enormous amount of power that Ecamm doesn't have, but Ecamm's simpler to use and can do kind of all of it in one place. So I think they're different things. I mean, I think you could probably do you could start your cooking show in Ecamm, but you would eventually want QLab. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was about to say, I tried Ecamm for a while and got, to your point, frustrated for even the simple stuff I want to do for the Scouts. And I didn't go to QLab because I went to the Memo Live model, but a powerful programmatic one on a Mac really works quite well, whether it's QLab or Memo Live. I think it would work well. I stay away from OBS, much for the reason Benjamin stated earlier. Doesn't play nice.
Like when I'm doing Zoom events that just require some playback and require graphics and some music and other things like that, I'm using Memo Live for that. You know, if it's just what I would consider a simple event where it doesn't need the big iron that we have in the office, you know, and it doesn't have a budget for that. But we still want to do play out. You know, the Memo Live solution is, you know, but Ecamm could probably do some of it, and so can Manycam, and so can a lot of the other ones. But it taps out pretty quickly. All right, next question. We're running out of time.
Super cool jacketed John Idelson in Monterey says, what do people think of Mevo being purchased by Logitech?
Go ahead, Grant.
I couldn't find it. It's the first I heard about it, but it would make sense to me that they have a whole bunch of extra tech, particularly for live streaming and probably the team. I think it would be some very interesting how the new products that Logitech would create with that sort of industry knowledge.
Well, they just announced, and you remember they had the 4K camera that streamed, and then they were going direct to Vimeo, and they just announced that they've been acquired by Logitech. So,
Bill?
Yeah, buying camera movement technology and expertise for the Logitech brand seems like a perfectly good fit to me.
It does. You know, I think that the thing with Mevo is that they have their software, and I swear every time they tried to show it to me, no matter what conference I was in, as soon as I picked up the iPad, it crashed. You know, like I was like, it must be me. It must be like my magnetic personality or something.
No, it happened to me too. It's
every time. So I've never seen it actually work well because, you know, and like, you know, Jeff Jarvis wanted to show it to me at some event. He brought it over and he put it in front of me, and I tapped on it and it crashed. I was like, I don't know what I just did.
Logitech never stops working when you touch it, so maybe they'll bring that to the Mevo.
Exactly. Go ahead, Jen.
The one thing they could offer is there's going to be huge distribution now. Now Mevo can become a household word. If they, you know, it's a studio in a box for a simple, you know, for somebody who doesn't want to do anything but just stand in front of the camera and have people. Mevo does it all when it works right.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was going to say a 4K Brio is a slow Mevo because it outputs HD. When it outputs HD to Zoom, it's a slow Mevo.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Doug Johnson in Orem, Utah says, I'd love to have access to some of the business plan features of Zoom, but as someone who works alone, I can't possibly justify paying for 10 licenses. Is anyone considering accounts for someone like me?
I don't know if you get anything from the business accounts is there anything you get that you couldn't get if you just got a Zoom room? Like if you got a Zoom room, I think that gets you most of the things you would get out of the business account. Go ahead, Benjamin.
It's the 1080p meeting
Right,
resolution.
but that
You need a business account.
and do you need that with the Zoom? I guess the Zoom room. You can make a request. I think the 1080p I think is a request either way. But you may be right that I don't. I don't know.
You
if
need the
that's-
business account to make the request, as best I can tell, or to get your request approved.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Or
it's- that's
education,
what-
I should say.
Yeah, and I think that that's because it's more costly to support that. Go ahead, Grant, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One thing was API access, extra reporting. There's a whole reporting dashboard that you don't get in the Pro, and API access for reporting. But I heard a little birdie say once that if you have a little chat to support, sometimes they can swing a little deal for you where you may not need to have 10 accounts to get business. So it's worth chatting to support.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was going to say, and there's a little bit of, if you just ask some of your friends around, that they're kind of loaning the 1080p around a little bit too. So if you're buying it for the 1080p, just ask your friends, and if they trust you and are nice, you might make a deal.
Next question
is for Andy, but he's not here. Or others, it says, if you had to write one of the who should attend blurbs for one of the 5-week Zoom OSC trainings, what would it say? That's from Brody Hefner.
Chuck?
Anyone who wants to make their life easier working in Zoom.
I mean, if you're serious about doing something that sits above everything you're used to using in Zoom, then you need to learn how to use it. And I guess what I would say, I mean, like if you want to set yourself apart and you're not going to start buying a bunch of hardware or a bunch of software or a bunch of other things, you just want to make what your executions with Zoom more effective and set them above everybody else's in that in between. Zoom OSC is a pretty key way of doing that. If you're doing production, you want to do integration. I'm looking at Zoom OSC as a way to tie into my hardware so that it will do things for me to feed my system, feed the beast with what it needs from Zoom without having to click on things. That I have something that is constantly just interacting with it to pull the feeds that I need. So I think that there's a couple different ways. And the one thing I will say is that it's a very unique opportunity to have the developer. We're going to remember the time when we, Andy's not going to have time to do this for very much longer. Like he's onto something pretty. The fact that we get to sit there with the person writing it or one of the people writing it and having the kind of interaction that Andy's providing, it's maybe we get to do it once more if we're lucky. Yeah. But
and before Zoom acquired him.
Yeah, before Zoom acquired him, or before he gets big investment and he can't ever do it again. Like this is the one time to do this. If you're gonna learn it, to get it from him. Now, what we're trying to do is get all that information out of him and into us, so that we have a couple hundred people that can keep on growing that. But it's to get a developer like that who is really one of us. That's the reason that I, that we're doing this is that Andy was coming just for fun, like he was already here. So I think that is the we get to do it. But he's, I don't know if we'll get to do it again. Go ahead, John.
Anybody who's in tech theater who uses any of the programs that it hooks to, that's looking for work, they should come learn this.
Yeah. Next question.
Art by Junior from Cupertino. I'm attempting to set up a Marshall CV380-CS. The software shows iris control, but it's grayed out or unresponsive. Also, what is FLK control?
Oh, Marshalls. All right, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I had to look it up in the manual, so I'm cheating here. It says provides a proper image sensor frequency to match the power frequency in order to minimize video flicker. And we see this on webcams if they're going to Europe or if they're going to the US. If you don't have them on the right frequency, it'll strobe or flicker. So it's just but FLK stands for flicker control. So you just want to make sure it's at US for ours.
Next question.
Coop from Carson City says, are you going to post the Discord link this evening, or is that only in the morning show?
I will post it. Post it right now. Go ahead. Next question.
Moving to Ash Yadev of New York City, who's been on the panel tonight. Has anyone tried the new Apple Chrome extension for password management? I've not managed to get it to work on Big Sur or High Sierra.
Go ahead, John.
So I did a little research into it tonight, and it was just released on Sunday. You've got to have the iCloud control panel, and I installed it. It doesn't look like it works on Chrome on Macs. It's only supposed to be for Chrome on Windows. And it's not working for me yet. but I haven't restarted my PC yet, so that could be part of it as well. I may have to relog in, but you're supposed to see in your iCloud control panel a password setting place to sync, and I installed iCloud there, and I didn't see that option yet. So it may be rolling out slowly, may not be available for everyone yet, but that you can find the plugin in the Chrome store, and it is from Apple.
Go, Jason.
Even if it's from Apple, when it comes to something as important as a password manager, do not be first in line. Do not beta test, okay? Just LastPass. I hate to say it, but LastPass. That said, I'm sure it'll be great soon.
Next question.
James Babbitt is here from the Normal Morning Show from San Diego. When attending a Zoom meeting with the Facebook portal or the Echo 8, the video resolution is increased. Do you know if this feature will become available on other devices?
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
So I have the portal here. I have the Echo 8 here, kind of like Pokemon. You got to collect them all. The last one is in the other room, and it's the Google device. So that one hasn't shipped. The software hasn't shipped yet, but that's the last one.
Go ahead, Grant.
You could do it with a Mac or a PC or Linux using the Zoom Rooms. So it just needs a Zoom Room license, and then it'll do the same thing, which is essentially what is behind each of these devices anyway. It's a little Zoom Room device.
Next question.
Stuart Fairweather normally posts very understandable questions. He's got me confused here. From a plane, what can be shared here? I'm not sure I understand that, Stuart.
I think we were talking about from a plane. I was editing. We were traveling so much. There was this constant thing. If we thought we had relatively good bandwidth on a plane, we'd start pulling out things to test. So we tested ClearComm. We would test the Agent IC on it, and we like jumping into shows and does this work? And then we did one where we did a Zoom session from one plane to the other. So there were two of us in the plane, and we've done it. Definitely, we've done Agent IC where two of us were in a plane, and then we did a Zoom session. The only thing we didn't do, because the minis didn't exist, is we would have. The thing that went through my head was, like, when the mini came out, one of the things I thought it would be really fun to try to, because we've switched a switcher from the plane, but can we switch a switcher in another plane from the first plane? That was like that. that was definitely a thought. Go ahead, Jeff.
I am completely guilty of doing the same things. First thing, I was sitting in, we're about to take off, and my Skype rings. I'd already put it in airplane mode, but my Skype rings. I'm like, that shouldn't be right. And it was my client in the UK, and I'm like, what do? I just answered it and just kept going. But later that same flight, pulled out the laptop and the Xbox controller, remoted into one of our sites, and control the camera at the site. Yeah, just to say I did it. That's all.
You just want to push it to see, you have no idea what would ever happen or how you'd ever do it. I know when FaceTime first came out, like literally the first day that FaceTime came out, I pinged a friend of mine, Hanif Abdul Razul in Tanzania. And I was like, let's do a FaceTime. And we were pretty sure it was the first FaceTime between the United States and Africa. And it was all like 15 frames a second in this tiny little window, just barely working. And we could barely hear each other. But we were, just try to, how do we push this as fast as we can? Go ahead, Stuart.
Now I have to know, what power supply did you use for the ATEM Mini while you were flying? And did the stewards let you get on with lithium ion?
No. So number one is I've never done it because I haven't done it I said we've controlled a switcher on the far end. We haven't done it because I haven't really been flying since the ATEM Mini came out. I haven't had the ATEM Mini. And so, but you could absolutely plug it into the little, if you're in whatever Economy Plus, on United, you'd be able to plug into the plug-in. The draw is so low, it would be easy. Next question.
Prima Q from Motown, otherwise known as Detroit. With respect to Netflix movie Social Dilemma, what resonated with you? Why, and your solution?
I think that they're at least as scary as that. I mean, like the social networks. Go ahead, Jason.
If it got your attention, good. But like any piece that is designed very clearly to give you exactly one perspective, just understand, pay attention, because that kind of thing is in many, many EULAs that you saw and that you didn't see and that you've already agreed to. So just, be mindful.
And I can't get into it just yet, but I'm thinking a lot about other options. So McConnell is a piece of a larger puzzle. Next question.
Well, it's really more just toss off. Eddie Scott of Mission Viejo, California says, how many Brits are here at 2 a.m.? So
it's even later now. It's 4 a.m. I think he asked that when it was 2 a.m. That was 4 a.m. 2 a.m. ago. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so we have made it to the other end of an evening session that was filled with great questions, filled with great commentary. We have proven that we can do it in the evening as well. And so thank you everyone for showing up. I wasn't sure. I figured, we'll get 40 or 50. I think we said that. I think I said it was, if we got 40 or 50 or whatever, I'd be happy. So
we had a heck of a lot more people here than the first regular shows that I was on.
Well, what was interesting is that everyone who signed up showed up. I mean, I guess that would be the case because they just got the sign up. But I was like 91. I was like, we'll get about 70. And then it was like at one point there was 94. And I was like, a couple new people jumped in. So anyway, we'll keep on doing it I'll fix the time thing so it's not every 8 weeks. But we'll do general Q&A on Monday nights. And we'll see how it goes. Definitely socialize it. Let other people know. I'd like to try to get both of these to a point. Although I will say that this one was active, and maybe it's just because it's not first thing in the morning or whatever, but there was plenty of questions to go 2 hours with the size of the audience that it was. And so I don't think that there was any real issue there. Go ahead, Jen.
So Alex, is that link you posted, the general pass-around link, that isn't keyed to us? That's just
That's right. The one you got out, the one you got this morning, or the one that you'll get, in the next couple mornings is that. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Are you going to put anything together for Super Bowl? Because, people can't get together physically. So virtually, are you going to do something for Super Bowl for us?
I don't, it's a sport. Like half of our audience doesn't even watch the football. That's the problem is
no, it's a production event, Alex, period.
We could talk about the productions. It's possible. Let me think on it. It's possible because the Steelers aren't playing. If the Steelers were playing, I'd be way too intense about it, and I wouldn't want to talk to anyone because there'd be, I'd have a hard time keeping a clean show. Keeping that rule would be very difficult if the Steelers were in the Super Bowl. But since it's the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, it's possible. The question is really whether it'd be enough to talk about the whole show from a technical perspective. I don't think I'd want to talk about the game, but it is the most technically advanced live show in the world. Like it's, you'd need your
telestrator working.
Oh, I can do that. I have that working. I can do that.
But we should only telestrate the ads.
I was going to say each ad is a big production.
The problem is I can't really telestrate it because legally I can't broadcast it. So, I can't
screenshots like grabs.
Oh, if we don't stream it.
Yeah, there's no reason. There's no reason like grabbing a still and attributing it in the bottom, just like any other journalist. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to get you in trouble, but that's how I've done it before on the air.
It's technically fair use if we're drawing on top of it. So
it was like what you did with the Disney thing, with the Pixar movie, with Star Wars.
Yeah, but the difference was that we weren't. So there's a big distinction is that I wasn't. We were all watching it together, but I wasn't playing anything. So I wasn't actually, everyone had paid and everyone had their own access to the movie and we were simply talking over top of it. So from a legal perspective, it's different. I don't think there's a legal problem. It's just, no one's going to come after us for doing a technical breakdown of a football game. But if we're not streaming it, then I don't have to worry about YouTube taking it down either. Go ahead, John, and then Ray.
When is the Super Bowl? I hate to ask the obvious question, but I really didn't know.
This Sunday, Ray.
Yeah, the other thing about the Super Bowl is those wonderful commercials that are in the U.S., different set of commercials in Canada and other countries. We don't get to see them.
That's unfortunate. They're really fun. I saw the stats on this next one. I guess they said there's 120 cameras. 120 cameras, and there was X number of 8K cameras and some 4K cameras, and they've got some new. I think they're going to keep on taking the end zone. I think they're going to expand the end zone the R7s that they're using. There's a Sony, A7Rs or A7Ss that they're using at the ends of the field. It's kind of cool. Jeff?
The one thing about the Super Bowl is that I did read about is Budweiser pulled out, and also
a whole bunch of people did.
Pepsi. So like 3, and I think maybe Coke too, but I know it was Pepsi and Budweiser for sure. And I was really shocked that they pulled out. That's a big ad power right there. They're talking about how they're just going to give it back to the communities and do.
It sounds like they filled it up with just other sponsors though. Like it was like a little gel. Like it was empty for a second, and then it just filled in. Like a whole bunch of other people were like, oh, I have access to buying some ad time. It doesn't sound like it affected them that much, but it's an interesting trend. Ray and then Jason.
My one claim to fame is I flew a glider in a Cadillac commercial that played on the Super Bowl about 20 years ago. And my face appeared for 3 seconds.
That's great. Jason?
Last year's game, they had this Amazon, AWS Next, Next Statistics or something, where they were doing the really neat kind of 3D real time. And I got the sense that because of the nature of the game, the whole thing was, they had a lot more than they used. So I'd be interested to see what they end up doing with something like that this year with 120 cameras. That's amazing.
So to Jan's point, I'll think about it. I might. Because if we did it through YouTube TV, you could stop it and draw on it. Like you could look at what they're doing right here and look at this and then hit play again. That would be kind of fun. It'd be kind of fun to do. When we end up behind, then we get. But the problem is you won't skip through the ads, but we can skip through the halftime and get caught up again. All right. We'll think about it. All right, it's good. It's a good suggestion. I gotta talk to my boss, find out if she's okay with me adding more hours that I've already added. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you everybody, and for some of you, I'll see you in the morning. It's only a couple hours away. All right. Take care and have a good one. And we'll see all of you again. It was good one. We'll see you, and some of you will see you next Monday.